Oh yeah, it's past time to get away. Time to take a breather. Get the family out of the house. Leave the literal grind behind and
Oh, yeah.
Washington City, the District of Columbia, one of the most beautifully planned cities in the United States. Designed by Major Pierre Charles L'Enfant for George Washington, the first president of the United States, as urban plan in 1791. On January 24, 1791, President George Washington announced the congressionally designed permanent location of the national capital, a diamond-shaped 10-mile tract at the confluence of the Potomac and Eastern Branch rivers. A subsequent survey of the area was undertaken by Andrew Ellicott and Benjamin Banneker. 40 boundary stones laid at 1-mile intervals established the boundaries based on celestial calculations by Banneker, a self-taught astronomer of African descent and one of the few blacks living in the vicinity. Within this 100 square mile diamond, which would become the District of Columbia, a smaller area was laid out as the City of Washington. There are many ways to arrive in Washington. You come by car, there is I-95, I-295, 66 to DC, I-495, and Interstate 50. If you are flying into Washington, you can access the city through Ronald Reagan National Airport, which is located just right off the Potomac. There are plenty of rental car agencies available at the airport, taxi cabs, and Uber drivers upon demand. But if you want to make it to your hotel on your own, you'll be just fine. The city's subway and bus systems were designed to get you anywhere you want to go on a constant basis. If you come from any other town, you might experience that buses in DC run more often than they do for you back home. This means if you miss a bus, the next one will be along shortly. No need to worry. The city's metro subway system radiates out from the city center to distant locations in a spiral design as far as Maryland and Virginia. So if you are not driving during your visit, don't worry. If you are coming to the city by train, you will arrive at the beautifully designed Union Station by Amtrak. If you want to save on the price of a hotel, just choose the location beyond the city's limits on a metro route. Now, you can either take the train into the city or park your car at the subway station and continue on from there. Also, might I suggest up front when visiting DC that you wear a very comfortable pair of tennis shoes because there is so much to see. And it's all free. That's right. Every site we will show you, and many we won't be able to, name here are free of charge and a courtesy of the U.S. government as a gift to the citizens of the United States. First up on our list of sightseeing locations, I would suggest that you visit Arlington National Cemetery. There are many amazing sites in Arlington to visit while you are there, to include John F. Kennedy's gravesite, as well as his eternal flame. A short walk from the Custis Lee Mansion at the top of the hill in that cemetery will lead you over to the changing of the guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier. The changing of the guard occurs every half hour on hour as long as the cemetery is open, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., 365 days a year. The guard continues to change in that fashion 24 hours a day, as they have for over 70 years, whether you are there as a visitor or the cemetery is completely empty. This ceremony represents the only living monument to soldiers in the United States. From Arlington, we move across the Arlington Memorial Bridge towards Washington proper, and the first monument we come to is the Lincoln Memorial. The Lincoln Memorial stands at the west end of the National Mall as a neoclassical monument to the 16th President of the United States. Its location placed in a fitting spot from the view of the White House. The memorial, designed by Henry Bacon after ancient Greek temples, stands 190 feet long, 119 feet wide, and almost 100 feet high. It is surrounded by a peristyle of 36 fluted Doric columns, one for each of the 36 states in the Union at the time of Lincoln's death, and 2 columns in antis at the entrance behind the colonnade. The north and south side chambers contain carved inscriptions of Lincoln's second inaugural address, as well as his Gettysburg Address. The north and south side chambers contain carved inscriptions of Lincoln's second inaugural address, as well as his Gettysburg Address. Lying between the north and south chambers is a central hall containing the solitary figure of Lincoln sitting in contemplation. The statue was carved in 4 years by Piccirilli brothers under the supervision of the sculptor Daniel Chester French. The statue of Lincoln is 19 feet high and weighs 175 tons. The Lincoln Memorial has seen its share of stars, dignitaries, bore witness to the I Have a Dream speech, read by none other than Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. himself. In fact, if you stand on the very spot that Dr. King gave his speech, you can see the Washington Monument to your front, and to your left, the Executive Mansion, or what is commonly referred to as the White House. For more than 200 years, the White House has been more than just the home of presidents and their families. Throughout the world, it is recognized as the symbol of the president's administration and of the United States of America. The White House is the only private residence of a head of state, now, that is open to the public free of charge, just as all other monuments are in Washington. Now, the only caveat to visiting the mansion is you want to write or call your local senator's office for tickets in advance. The White House is the official residence and workplace of the President of the United States. It is located at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest in Washington, D.C. Our first president, George Washington, selected a site for the White House in 1791. The cornerstone was laid the very next year in 1792, and a competition design was submitted by Irish-born architect James Holborn. After 8 years of construction, President John Adams and his wife Abigail moved into the unfurnished house in the 1800s. During the War of 1812, the British set fire to the president's house in 1814. James Holborn was appointed to rebuild the house, and President James Monroe moved into the building in 1817. During Monroe's administration, the South Portico was constructed in 1824, and Andrew Jackson oversaw the addition of the North Portico in 1829. During the late 19th century, various proposals were added on to significantly expand the president's house or to build an entirely new house for the president, but these plans were never realized. In 1902, President Theodore Roosevelt began a major renovation of the White House, including the relocation of the president's office from the second floor of the residence to the newly constructed, temporary at the time, Executive Office Building, now known as the West Wing. The Roosevelt renovation was planned and carried out by the famous New York architectural firm McKean, Mead and White. Roosevelt's successor, President William Howard Taft, had the Oval Office constructed within an enlarged office wing. Next, we turn our attention to a very famous 555-foot obelisk that is a little bit over a mile located less from the White House. The name of that obelisk? The Washington Monument. The Washington Monument is an obelisk within the National Mall in Washington, D.C., built to commemorate George Washington, once Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army from 1775 to 1784, in the American Revolutionary War, and the first President of the United States of America in 1789 to 1797. The obelisk is located almost due east of the reflecting pool and the Lincoln Memorial. The monument itself, made of marble, granite, and bluestone, gneiss, is both the world's tallest, predominantly stone structure and the world's tallest obelisk, standing 554 feet 11 and 32nd inches tall, or roughly 555 feet. The obelisk overtaking the Colonnade Cathedral, it was the tallest structure in the world between 1884 and 1889, after which it was overtaken by the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Construction of the monument began in 1848 and was halted for a period of 23 years, from 1854 to 1877, due to the lack of funds, a struggle for control over the Washington National Monument Society, and the American Civil War. Now, although the stone structure was completed in 1884, internal ironwork and the knoll and installation of the memorial stones were not completed until 1888. A difference in shading of the marble, visible approximately 150 feet or 27% up, shows where construction was halted and later resumed with the marble from a different source. The original design was by Robert Mills, 1781 to 1855 of South Carolina, but he did not include his proposed colonnade due to a lack of funds, now proceeding only with the bare obelisk jutting from the ground. The cornerstone was laid on July 4th, 1848. The first stone was laid atop the unfinished stump on August 7, 1880. The capstone was set on December 6, 1884. The completed monument was dedicated on February 21st, 1885, and officially opened October 9th, 1888. An interesting side note to all of the beautiful monuments in the city of Washington is the visitor rate. The city set an all-time record in 2018. DC welcomed a total of 23.8 million visitors, setting a new record for the city. Turning from the Lincoln Memorial to the White House, and now to the U.S. Capitol. The United States Capitol, often called the Capitol Building, is the meeting place of the United States Congress and the seat of legislative branch of the U.S. federal government. It is located on Capitol Hill at the eastern end of the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Though no longer at the geographic center of the federal district, the Capitol forms the origin point for the district's street numbering system and the district's 4 quadrants. The original building was completed in 1800. It was partially destroyed in the 1814 burning of Washington by the British, then was fully restored within 5 years. The building was later enlarged with the addition of a massive dome and extended wings with expanded chambers for the legislature, the House of Representatives in the South Wing, and the Senate in the North Wing. Like the principal buildings of the executive and judicial branches, the Capitol is built in a neoclassical style and has a white exterior. Both its east and west elevators and elevations are formally referred to as fronts, though only the east front was intended for the reception of visitors and dignitaries. A late entry by amateur architect William Thornton was submitted on January 31st, 1793, to much praise for its grandeur, simplicity, and beauty by Washington, along with praise from Thomas Jefferson himself. Thornton was inspired by the east front of the Louvre, as well as the Paris Pantheon, for the center portion of the design. Thornton's design was officially approved in a letter dated April 5th, 1783 from Washington, and Thornton served as the first architect of the Capitol and later first superintendent of the United States Patent and Trademarks Office. From the past to our future in space, we turn now our attention from the Capitol building to the marvels of the National Air and Space Museum. The National Air and Space Museum of the Smithsonian Institute, also called the Air and Space Museum, it was established in 1946 as a National Air Museum and opened its main building on the National Mall near LaFont Plaza in 1976. In 2018, the museum saw approximately 6.2 million visitors, making it the 5th most visited museum in the world and the 2nd most visited museum in the United States. The museum contains the Apollo 11 Command Module, the Columbia Space Shuttle, the Friendship 7 capsule, which was flown by John Glenn, Charles Lindbergh's Spirit of St. Louis airplane, the Bell X-1, which broke the sound barrier, the model of the Starship Enterprise used in science fiction television show Star Trek. From visiting the future of the Smithsonian Institute's museum, we move ever backwards to one of the oldest museums on the mall area in Washington. We visit the Smithsonian Castle. The Smithsonian Castle literally has a castle in its design. A statue of Joseph Henry is displayed in front of the building. The Smithsonian Castle building, located near the National Mall in Washington, D.C., behind the National Museum of African American Art, and the Sackler Gallery, houses the Smithsonian Institute's administrative offices and information center. The building is constructed of Seneca red sandstone in the Norman Revival style, a 12th century combination of late Romanesque and early Gothic motifs, built in the Gothic and Romanesque Revival styles, and is nicknamed the Castle. The castle was completed in 1855 and designated as a National Historic Landmark in 1965. The castle was the first Smithsonian building designed by architect James Renwick Jr., whose other works include St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City and the Smithsonian Renwick Gallery, also in Washington, D.C. The building committee held a nationwide design competition in 1846 and selected Renwick's design by a unanimous vote. A cardboard model of Renwick's winning design survives and is on display in the castle. Initially intended to be built in white marble, then in yellow sandstone, the architect and building committee finally settled on Seneca red stone from the Seneca Quarry in Montgomery County, Maryland. The red stone was substantially less expensive than granite or marble, and while initially easy to work, was found to harden to a satisfactory degree on exposure to the elements. Scholarly evidence indicates it is likely that slaves were employed at Seneca in quarrying the stone for the castle, though no evidence has surfaced that slaves were involved in the actual castle construction. The building committee selected Gilbert Cameron as the general contractor, and construction began in 1847. The east wing was completed in 1849 and occupied by Secretary Joseph Henry and his family. The west wing was completed later that same year. A structural collapse in 1850 of partly completed work raised questions of workmanship and resulted in change to fireproof construction. The castle's exterior was completed in 1852. Next, on our day trip to the nation's capital, we visit the Thomas Jefferson Memorial. The Jefferson Memorial is a presidential memorial built in Washington, D.C. between 1939 and 1943 under the sponsorship of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Roosevelt thought that it was a suitable memorial to the founding father of the United States and Thomas Jefferson, the principal author of the United States Declaration of Independence and the founder of the Democratic Republican Party. The neoclassical building is situated in West Potomac Park on the shore of the Potomac River. It was designed by John Russell Pope and built by Philadelphia contractor John McShane. Construction began in 1939 and was completed in 1943. The bronze statue of Jefferson was added in 1947. Pope made no reference to Roman Pantheon and to Jefferson's own design for the rotunda at the University of Virginia. The Jefferson Memorial and the White House form one of the main anchor points in the area of the National Mall in D.C. The Washington Monument was intended to be located in the intersection of the White House and the site for the Jefferson Memorial, but soft, swampy ground required that it be situated to the east. It became apparent that the site was well suited for another high-profile memorial since it sat directly south of the White House. By 1901, the Senate Park Commission, better known as the Macmillan Commission, had proposed placing a pantheon-like structure on the site hosting the statues of illustrious men of the nation, or whether the memory of some individual shall be honored by a monument of the first rank may be left to the future. The completion of the Tidal Basin Inlet Bridge in 1908 helped to facilitate the recreational usage of the East and West Potomac parks. In 1918, large liquid chlorine dispensers were installed under the bridge to treat the water and make the tidal basin, also known as Twinning Lake, suitable for swimming. The Tidal Basin Beach on the site of the future memorial opened in May 1918 and operated as a whites-only facility until 1925, when it was permanently closed to avoid the question of racial integration. A design completion was held for a memorial to the Theodore Roosevelt in 1925. The winning design was submitted by John Russell Pope and consisted of a half-circle memorial situated next to a circular basin. We leave Jefferson behind now and take a short trip to the site dedicated to one civil rights pioneer, Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial is located in the West Potomac Park next to the National Mall in Washington, D.C. It covers 4 acres and includes the Stone of Hope, a granite statue of the civil rights monument leader Martin Luther King Jr., carved by sculptor Lee Yickson. The inspiration for the memorial design is a line from King's I Have a Dream speech. Out of the mountain of despair, a stone of hope. The memorial opened to the public on August 22nd, 2011, after more than 2 decades of planning, fundraising, and construction. This national memorial is the 395th unit in the United States National Park Service. The monumental memorial is located at the northwest corner of the tidal basin near the Franklin Delano Roosevelt Memorial on a sight line linking the Lincoln Memorial to the northwest and the Jefferson Memorial to the southeast. The official address of the monument is 1964 Independence Avenue, Southwest, commemorates the Civil Rights Act of 1964. A ceremony dedicating the memorial was scheduled for Sunday, August 28, 2011, the 40th anniversary of the I Have a Dream speech that Martin Luther King Jr. delivered from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in 1963, but was postponed until October 16th, which was the 16th anniversary of the 1995 Million Man March on the National Mall due to Hurricane Irene. But there are too many locations to name on visit in this one short video. But I would suggest that while you are there, that you visit the Vietnam Memorial Wall, be it day or night. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial is a U.S. national memorial in Washington, D.C., honoring the service members of the U.S. Armed Forces who fought in the Vietnam War. The 2-acre site is dominated by a black granite wall engraved with the names of those service members who died as a result of their service in the Vietnam and Southeast Asia during the war. The memorial is in Constitution Gardens adjacent to the National Mall and just northeast of the Lincoln Memorial. The memorial is maintained by the National Park Service and receives around 3 million visitors each year. The memorial wall was designed by American architect Maya Lin. In 2007, it was ranked 10th of the list of Americans' favorite architects by the American Institute of Architects. The memorial wall is made up of two 246-foot, 9-inch long black granite walls, polished to a high finish and etched with the names of the service members, being honored in 140 panels of horizontal rows with regular typeface and spacing. The walls are sunken into the ground with the earth behind them. At the highest tip, the apex where they meet, they are 10 foot high and they taper to a height of 8 inches or 200 millimeters at the extremities. Symbolically now, this is described as a wound that is closed and healing, and exemplifies the land art movement of the 1960s, which produced sculptures that sought to reconnect with the natural environment. The stone for which the 144 panels was quarried in Bangalore, India. One wall points towards the Washington Monument, the other direction, the Lincoln Memorial, meeting at an angle of 125 degrees, 12 foot high. Each wall has 72 panels, 70 listing names of number 1E through 70E and 70W through 1W, and to very small blank panels at the extremities. There is a pathway along the base of the wall where visitors may walk. The wall originally listed 57,939 names when it was dedicated in 1982. However, other names have since been added, and as of May 2018, there were 58,320 names, including 8 women. The number of names on the wall is different than the official number of the U.S. Vietnam War deaths, which is 58,220 as of May 2018. The names inscribed are not a complete list of those who are eligible for inclusion, as some names were omitted at the request of families. Now we can't talk about Washington, D.C. without talking about the cherry blossoms. On average, D.C.'s cherry blossoms bloom around the last week of March into the first week of April, so we hope you can make it at the end of March. But it varies year to year based on weather conditions, so it can also be a little before or after that period. The planting of the cherry trees in Washington, D.C. originated in 1912 as a gift of the friendship to the people of the United States from the people of Japan. The beauty of the cherry blossom is a symbol with rich meaning in Japanese culture. If you are in town around this period, be sure to enjoy the festival of the annual Cherry Blossom Parade. The annual Cherry Blossom Festival takes place every year throughout the city of Washington, D.C. A celebration of the gift of the cherry trees and our country's friendship with Japan. The festival features hundreds of events and activities that span 2 weeks and include parades, concerts, art, and much more. Let's move to the home of the third branch of government for the United States, that being the Supreme Court. Visitors may enter the building from the plaza doors located on each side of the main steps. A wheelchair accessible ramp is located along the Maryland Avenue on the left side of the building. All visitors must pass through a security screening before entering the building. During the months of March through June, visitors should anticipate longer waiting times to enter the building due to larger crowds visiting the nation's capital. The Supreme Court of the United States is located on the 1st Street Northeast between East Capitol Street and the Maryland Avenue adjacent to the U.S. Capitol and the Library of Congress. As we close out our tour of the nation's capital, might I suggest you visit and get a bite to eat in Chinatown. Washington, D.C.'s Chinatown is a small historic area east of downtown Washington, D.C., along H and I streets between 5th and 8th Streets Northwest. Historically, the area was once home to thousands of Chinese immigrants, which has shrunk to fewer than 300 in 2017. The current neighborhood was the second in Washington to be called Chinatown since 1931. Originally, the first Chinatown was built in the Federal Triangle on the south side of Pennsylvania Avenue sometime after 1851, but was relocated to the 8th Street area when a new federal building was built there. A Chinese gate was built over 8th Street at 7th Street in 1997. Prominent landmarks such as the Capital One Arena, a sports and entertainment arena, has gentrified the area. The neighborhood is served by the Gallery Place station of the Washington Metro. As we end our tour of DC, we give you daytime and stunning nighttime spectacular views. The beautiful U.S. Capitol at night, well lit. The Lincoln Memorial, an awesome sight. The Washington Monument, the tall obelisk. Beautiful front shot of the Lincoln Memorial. The Jefferson Memorial. The White House. Finally, a view of the Washington Monument on the way out of town. See you again next time on Holiday Road, USA.